The storm came without warning, rolling across the prairie like a living thing, dark and deliberate. Wind tore through the tall grass and bent it low, flattening gold into submission. The ranch house stood alone against the violence, broad-shouldered and weathered, its white paint dulled by dust and years of sun. On the porch, a tall man gripped the railing with work-roughened hands and watched the sky bruise itself purple. He had the kind of face that belonged in old portraits, strong jaw, straight nose, long curls brushing his collar, but there was nothing romantic about the way he stared into the storm. His wife had loved thunder. She used to count between lightning and sound, smiling as if she could tame it. Now thunder only reminded him of absence. Behind him, a chair scraped. "Papa," his daughter called. He turned. She stood in the doorway, thin shoulders squared with an effort she didn't yet realize she made. 6 years old, already trying to carry pieces of him she shouldn't have to touch. Her dark braid hung over one shoulder, slightly undone. Her mother had always braided it. "It's just weather," he said gently. She studied his face, measuring truth. "It's loud." "I know." From inside came the smaller voice, high and uncertain. "Is Mama scared?" The words struck harder than the wind. His son appeared behind his sister, hair tousled, shirt half-buttoned, 5 years old and still expecting the world to correct itself if he waited long enough. The rancher stepped forward and crouched so they wouldn't see how the question hollowed him. "Mama isn't scared of anything," he answered carefully. "You remember that." The boy nodded, satisfied for the moment. The girl did not. She watched her father the way a grown woman might, sensing cracks beneath the surface. Lightning split the horizon, illuminating the dirt road that led toward town, a pale ribbon cutting through endless land. For a heartbeat, something moved along it, a shape against the storm. He straightened slowly. At first he thought it was debris carried by wind, then a stray animal driven off course. But the shape held upright. It leaned into the gusts and kept walking. A woman's. No wagon, no horse, just a single figure wrapped in a faded shawl, skirts snapping against her legs as rain began to fall in heavy, slanted sheets. His daughter saw her next. "Papa." He didn't answer. He was already stepping off the porch. By the time the woman reached the yard gate, she was drenched. Dark hair clung to her cheeks and neck in curling strands. She looked younger than the hardship in her eyes suggested, but older than her smooth skin implied. 27, perhaps. The storm flattened the world around her, yet she stood with stubborn dignity, one hand on the gate latch as if asking permission from wood and wire alike. He crossed the muddy yard and opened it before she could. Up close he saw exhaustion carved into her expression. Not weakness, exhaustion. There was a difference. Her hands were red from cold, her boots worn thin at the toes, but her spine did not bend. "Evening," she said, voice steady despite the wind. "Why evening?" They regarded each other for a moment that stretched longer than courtesy allowed. He noticed the faint tremor in her shoulders, the way she kept her chin lifted to avoid appearing desperate. "I'm looking for work," she said finally. "Cooking, cleaning, sewing. I can mend fences if shown how. I won't take charity." The last words came sharp, like a warning. Thunder rolled overhead. "You're a long way from town," he replied. "Yes." That was all she offered. Rain thickened. He glanced toward the house where his children watched through the window, their small silhouettes framed in flickering lamplight. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alice." "Alice what?" "Alice," she hesitated barely a second before adding, "widow." There it was, the truth placed plainly between them, no ornament. He felt the familiar tightening in his chest at the word, widow. The storm seemed to pause around it. "I'm Daniel Hayes," he said. "This is my land." "I know," a faint flush touched her cheeks. "I was told you might need help." "Told by who?" "A shopkeeper. He said you've 2 young children and no housekeeper." "The shopkeeper talked too much." Lightning cracked close enough to shake the ground. Alice flinched despite herself, then steadied. Pride battled practicality in her gaze. "I can pay fair wages," he said slowly. "I'm not asking for pity," she replied. "Didn't say you were." Water streamed from the edge of her shawl. She was shivering now, though she tried to hide it. "You'll drown out here," he said. "Come inside, we'll speak where it's dry." For a breath she seemed ready to refuse, but the wind answered for her. She stepped through the gate. Inside, warmth wrapped around them. The smell of stew lingered faintly from supper, though neither child had eaten much. Alice paused just past the threshold, careful not to drip across the polished boards. The children stood by the hearth. The boy stared openly. The girl folded her arms. Alice knelt without being prompted, bringing herself to their level. "Hello," she said softly. "I'm Alice." The boy stepped closer. "Are you scared of thunder?" She smiled faintly, a little. He considered that, then nodded. Mama wasn't. The girl shot him a look, protective and wounded all at once. Alice's expression shifted, something gentle, something aching, but she did not comment. "That sounds like she was very brave." "She was," the girl said quickly, as if guarding a treasure. Daniel watched the exchange with careful attention. Alice did not reach for them. She did not try to charm. She simply remained steady in their presence, as if children were not foreign territory. He handed her a towel. Their fingers brushed. Her skin was cold. "You can change into something dry," he said. "We've spare things." "I won't impose." "It's not imposition, it's common sense." She hesitated, then accepted. While she changed in the small washroom, he knelt before the hearth and stirred the coals. His son climbed into his lap without asking, pressing his face into Daniel's chest. "Is she staying?" the boy whispered. "I don't know." The girl remained standing. "We don't need anyone," she declared quietly. He met her eyes. "Everyone needs someone." She looked away first. Alice returned wearing one of his late wife's simple dresses. The sight struck him harder than expected. The fabric hung differently on her frame, yet memory layered over present so seamlessly it stole his breath. She noticed his stillness and misread it. "I can take it off," she said quickly. "I didn't mean." "It's fine," he interrupted. "It's just cloth." But it wasn't just cloth. They sat at the table. He poured coffee for himself, warm milk for her. "Tell me about your husband," he said. Her jaw tightened. "He worked the mines west of here. Shaft collapsed 3 months ago. They pulled out 12 men, none breathing." "I'm sorry." "So am I." No tears followed, only fact. "I've been working where I can," she continued. "Families need washing done. Bread needed, children watched, but work dries up when winter threatens. And men," she paused, weighing words, "men think a woman alone is easier to bargain with." The meaning settled heavy. "I won't be bargained," she added. "I don't bargain for people," he said evenly. Silence grew, thick but not hostile. Rain battered the windows. He studied her openly now. She was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't softness that held him. It was the refusal to collapse, the way grief had sharpened rather than erased her. "My wife died last year," he said at last. Alice's gaze lifted to his. "Fever," he continued, quick and cruel, left 2 children who still wake expecting her voice. Understanding flickered between them like distant lightning. "I'm sorry," she said, and this time the words carried weight beyond politeness. He leaned back in his chair, fingers drumming once against the wood before going still. "I do need help," he admitted. "The house, the children, I can pay wages, offer room and board." She nodded slowly. That would be enough. But he did not look relieved. Instead, he looked conflicted. The storm howled louder, pressing against the walls as if demanding entry. His son yawned, finally overtaken by fatigue. His daughter fought it stubbornly. Alice rose and gently guided them toward their rooms without instruction. She moved with quiet assurance, tucking blankets, smoothing hair from foreheads. She did not linger, but she did not rush either. When she returned, Daniel was standing by the window again. "You're good with them," he said. "They're grieving," she replied. "So am I." He turned, something resolved in his expression. "I don't want a housekeeper," he said. Her spine stiffened. "I need a mother for my children." The words fell heavy and unadorned. Her eyes widened, not with flattery, but with alarm. "And you," he continued carefully, "need a home." The air shifted between them, electric as the storm outside. "Are you offering marriage?" she asked, incredulous. "I am. For convenience." "For survival," he said bluntly, "yours and mine." Color drained from her face. "I won't be purchased." "I'm not buyings." "It sounds like you are." He stepped closer but kept distance enough to show restraint. No expectations beyond partnership. No demands you don't agree to. My children would have stability. You would have protection. And you, she asked sharply, what would you have? He opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth hovered unsaid. She shook her head slowly. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know nothing. Thunder cracked overhead, rattling glass. I know you walked miles in a storm rather than beg, he said quietly. I know you didn't try to win my children with sweet lies. I know you said widow without shame. Her breathing quickened. That's not the same as love, she whispered. I didn't mention love. The honesty hurt more than deceit might have. She stepped back as if struck. Then it is convenience. It's necessity. She laughed once brittle. I buried my husband with my own hands. I won't bury myself next. I'm not asking you to disappear, he said. It feels like you are. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. Outside, the storm began to ease, rain softening to steady rhythm. You can refuse, he said finally. Stay tonight, decide in the morning. And if I refuse, I'll pay you for the week regardless. She stared at him, searching for insult, finding none. You'd marry a stranger for your children, she asked quietly. Yes. And you expect me to marry a stranger for shelter? Yes. They held each other's gaze, the blunt symmetry of it almost cruel. For a fleeting second, something warmer flickered beneath practicality, an awareness neither dared name. She drew a slow breath. I won't be touched without consent. You won't bathe. I won't be silenced. You won't. I won't replace her. His voice softened for the first time. No one could. The answer steadied her more than flattery would have. The house felt smaller suddenly, charged with possibility and risk. I need until morning, she said. You have it. He stepped aside, granting space as deliberately as he had offered proposal. She moved toward the small spare room at the end of the hall. At the doorway, she paused, fingers brushing the frame as if testing its reality. Daniel, she said without turning. Yes. If I agree, it will not be because I'm helpless. I wouldn't want you if you were. She disappeared into the room and closed the door softly. Daniel remained where he stood, listening to the fatting storm and the faint creak of floorboards as she moved inside. The house, once hollow, now held breath again, uncertain, fragile. In the quiet, his daughter appeared at the end of the hall, watching him with solemn eyes. Is she staying? She asked. He looked toward the closed door, then back at his child. I don't know, he answered honestly. But for the first time in a year, he hoped. And hope, he knew, was far more dangerous than any storm. Morning arrived washed clean and deceptively calm, sunlight spreading over the prairie as if the previous night's storm had been a fevered dream. Alice stood at the small window of the spare room, watching mist lift from the grass in pale ribbons. The ranch stretched wide and unguarded beneath the sky, fences cutting measured lines through land that did not naturally accept boundaries. She felt much the same. She had not slept. Every creak of timber, every distant shift of cattle, had reminded her that she was inside a stranger's home contemplating a stranger's proposal. Marriage. The word sat heavy, not romantic but practical, like a tool meant for survival rather than pleasure. Yet beneath practicality, something unsettled pulsed, fear of surrender, fear of wanting more than safety. A soft knock came at her door. Breakfast is ready, Daniel's voice said. No impatience, no demand. She opened the door to find him standing a careful distance away, sleeves rolled, hair still damp from washing at the pump. He looked as if he had been awake for hours, though his eyes betrayed little rest. The children sat at the table when she entered. The boy swung his legs, curiosity bright as morning. The girl sat, chin lifted, guarding a kingdom no one had asked to conquer. Alice took the empty chair Daniel pulled out for her. The gesture was simple, almost formal. It unsettled her more than if he had tried to charm. He set a plate before her. You'll need strength for walking back if you decide against staying. The statement carried no accusation. And if I decide to stay, she asked quietly. Then we'll go to town tomorrow. The girl's fork paused midair. Town for what? Daniel met his daughter's eyes for a ceremony. Silence fell like dust. The boy brightened. A party. No, the girl said sharply, a wedding. The word hovered, fragile and dangerous. Alice folded her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. She looked at the children before she looked at him. I'll stay, she said. The decision did not feel triumphant. It felt deliberate. Daniel's jaw tightened, relief flickering too quickly to hide. Then we'll do this properly. The girl pushed back her chair and stood. Mama didn't have a proper wedding, she said, voice thin with something close to accusation. She said love was enough. Alice felt the sting and accepted it. Your mother sounds wise. The girl studied her as if searching for mockery and finding none. The ceremony the next day was small, witnessed by a pastor and two townspeople who pretended not to stare. Alice wore a simple cream dress borrowed from the mercantile, her hair pinned neatly at her nape. Daniel stood beside her, solid and steady, speaking vows in a voice that did not waver. When it was done, he offered his arm. She took it because that was expected, though she felt the weight of eyes pressing against her back as they walked out. On the ride home, dust trailing behind the wagon, Alice watched the horizon instead of the man beside her. Marriage bound her legally. Trust would require more than a signature. The first days settled into careful rhythm. Alice rose before dawn, lighting the stove, kneading dough, stitching torn shirts. She moved through the house as if memorizing its breath. She did not rearrange furniture or touch the framed photograph on the mantel. She asked where linens were kept instead of assuming. Daniel noticed every restraint. The boy followed her like a curious shadow. Can you whistle? He asked while she hung laundry. Not well, she admitted. He demonstrated proudly, producing an uneven shriek of air that made her laugh despite herself. The sound startled both of them. The girl watched from the porch steps, expression unreadable. At supper that evening, Daniel paused after the first bite. You cook better than I do. That's a low standard, Alice replied before she could stop herself. The corner of his mouth lifted. It was the first hint of shared humor, small but undeniable. Yet tension lingered beneath civility. They slept in separate rooms as agreed, the hallway between them a silent boundary. Sometimes she heard his footsteps outside her door late at night, stopping, then moving on. Sometimes he saw her candlelight burning long after midnight. In town, whispers bloomed quickly. Alice felt them like burrs clinging to her skirt. She moved fast, one woman murmured near the well. Men with land don't stay alone long, another replied. Alice kept her back straight and her eyes forward. Pride was the only possession she had carried from her previous life. One afternoon, she found the girl in the parlor holding a pale blue dress against her small frame. The fabric was delicate, lace frayed at the cuffs. My mama's, the girl said before Alice could speak. It's beautiful. She wore it when she and Papa planted the apple trees. Alice stepped closer carefully. That must have been a good day. The girl's chin trembled, then steadied. Don't move it. I won't. The promise mattered more than the words. Days stretched into a week. The house grew warmer with routine, laughter surfacing cautiously. Daniel caught himself watching Alice as she braided his daughter's hair one morning, fingers gentle but unsure. You're pulling, the girl complained. Am I? Alice loosened her grip instantly. Show me how your mother did it. The girl demonstrated, small hands working with confidence. Alice imitated the pattern until it matched. Daniel felt something tighten and soften at once. But harmony was fragile. It shattered the afternoon Alice washed linens and instinctively folded the blue dress among them for safekeeping. She had meant only to protect it from dust. The girl found it placed differently on the shelf. You touched it, she said, voice shaking. I cleaned around it, Alice answered, careful. You moved it. The accusation echoed down the hall. Daniel arrived to see tears brimming in his daughter's eyes and Alice standing motionless, as if bracing for a blow. She doesn't get to change things, the girl insisted. She is Mama. Alice knelt slowly. You're right, I'm not. Then why are you here? Because I need shelter, because your father asked, because I'm tired of being alone. The answers swirled, none gentle enough for a child's grief. I'm here, Alice said instead, because your father thought we might help each other. I don't need help, the girl snapped. Maybe not, Alice replied softly, but sometimes grown people do. Daniel saw his daughter falter at that. That night, tension hung heavier than the storm had. Alice sat at the kitchen table long after dishes were washed, staring at her hands. "I can leave," she said when Daniel entered. The words struck like flint. "Is that what you want?" he asked. "I don't want to cause harm." "You're not. She thinks I am. She's grieving. So am I." Their gazes locked, raw and unguarded. "You said you wouldn't replace her," he reminded quietly. "I'm trying not to." "Then stay." The plea slipped through before he could disguise it as practicality. She searched his face, finding no demand, only vulnerability he rarely revealed. Before she could answer, a sharp crack split the night. Gunfire. Daniel was on his feet instantly, grabbing the rifle by the door. Another shot rang from the pasture, followed by the panicked lowing of cattle. "Stay inside," he ordered. Alice did not argue. She ran down the hall instead, gathering the children from their beds, pulling them into the root cellar beneath the kitchen floor. The boy clung to her waist. The girl trembled but did not cry. "It's just thieves," Alice murmured, steadying her voice. "Your father will handle it." Outside, hooves pounded, men shouting. Daniel's shot answered, sharp and precise. Silence fell, then distant retreat. Alice held the children until the house above them stopped shaking. When Daniel finally opened the cellar door, lantern light cast deep shadows across his face. His shirt was torn at the sleeve, dirt smeared along his jaw. "They're gone," he said. The boy launched himself forward, wrapping arms around his father's neck. The girl hesitated only a second before doing the same. Alice remained crouched, pulse still racing. Daniel's gaze found her in the dim light. "You kept them calm." "I did what needed doing." He extended a hand to help her up. This time, when her fingers closed around his, neither pulled away too quickly. Later, after the children slept between them on pallets dragged into the main room, Daniel spoke quietly into the dark. "I asked you here for them," he admitted, "but tonight I realized something." She waited. "I needed you too." The confession shifted the air. Alice lay staring at the ceiling, heart unsteady. She had agreed for survival. She had promised not to disappear. Yet somewhere between braiding hair and shielding children from gunfire, the house had begun weaving her into its walls. In the stillness before sleep claimed them, she felt the girl's small hand reach across the blanket and curl into her sleeve, not in acceptance yet, but in trust borrowed for one frightened night. Alice did not move. She understood then that staying would demand more courage than leaving ever had. And for the first time since she said yes, she wondered if she was brave enough to choose this family not because she needed shelter, but because she was beginning to want them. Autumn settled over the ranch in slow amber waves, brushing the fields with gold and setting the apple trees ablaze with ripening fruit. The air sharpened, clean and expectant, as though the land itself sensed a decision drawing near. Alice felt it in the way Daniel's gaze lingered longer than politeness required, in the way the children now moved around her without hesitation, as if she had always occupied the center of their days. Yet something remained unspoken between her and Daniel, a careful distance maintained not by mistrust, but by fear of breaking what had only just begun to mend. The morning the shift came began quietly. Alice stood at the stove, steam curling around her face, when Daniel entered from the yard, dust clinging to his boots and sunlight caught in his hair. He paused just inside the doorway, watching her without disguise. She felt the weight of his attention before she saw it. "You're starring," she said without turning. "I know." She faced him then, ladle in hand. "Why?" He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Because this house feels different when you're in it." Her breath caught. "Different how?" "Alive." The words settled between them, fragile but honest. Before she could respond, the boy barreled into the room, clutching a crooked wooden toy horse. "Mama," he stopped abruptly, eyes wide, as if surprised by his own choice of word. Silence followed. Alice knelt to his level. "What is it?" she asked gently, giving him space to correct himself. But he didn't. He leaned into her, holding the toy up proudly. "He can run faster now." Behind him, the girl watched, wary but not resentful. She had grown quieter in recent weeks, studying Alice with the serious concentration of someone weighing permanence. Daniel witnessed the moment and felt something inside him tilt irrevocably. The arrangement they had made for survival had begun reshaping itself into something neither of them had negotiated. Later that afternoon, Alice walked to the apple trees with the children, baskets hooked over their arms. The girl climbed the lower branches confidently, plucking fruit with practiced hands. The boy gathered those that fell, triumphant with each unbruised prize. Alice watched them with a tenderness that startled her. She had guarded herself carefully since agreeing to this marriage, reminding her heart that shelter did not equal belonging, but belonging had arrived quietly, disguised as routine. "Did Mama like apples?" the boy asked suddenly. Alice's pulse flickered. "I think she must have." "She laughed when Papa fell out of that tree," the girl added, pointing to the tallest one. Alice smiled, then she sounds like she had good humor. The girl descended slowly, holding out a perfect apple. "You can have this one," she said. It was not a grand, but it was an offering. Alice accepted it with reverence. That evening after the children slept, Daniel found her sitting on the porch steps, apple untouched in her lap, twilight staining the sky violet. "You're thinking too loudly," he observed. She huffed softly. "Is that so?" "Yes." He sat beside her, shoulders nearly brushing. "Tell me." She rolled the apple between her palms. "I never meant to stay beyond what we agreed." "You're free to leave," he said automatically, though the words tasted bitter. "That's not what I mean," she drew a breath. "When I first came here, I told myself this was survival, a roof, protection. I told myself I would not grow roots. And now?" Her voice trembled despite her effort to steady it. "Now I'm afraid I already have." Daniel turned toward her fully. "Is that fear or regret?" She met his eyes, searching for mockery and finding none. "Fear, because roots can be torn out." He reached for her hand before he could reconsider. This time she did not pull away. "I asked you to marry me for the children," he said quietly. "That was the truth, but it wasn't all of it." She waited. "I'd noticed you before the storm," he admitted. "In town, the way you carried yourself, the way you refused help unless it was earned. I told myself it was admiration, nothing more." Her pulse thudded in her ears. "When you knocked on my door, I thought fate was mocking me," he continued, "offering something I wanted when I wasn't ready to want anything." "You never said." "I was afraid if I did, you'd see it as weakness." She studied his face, the vulnerability there unvarnished. "I was afraid too," she whispered, "afraid of becoming dependent, afraid of loving a man who only needed a caretaker." He exhaled slowly. "I don't need a caretaker." "What do you need?" He did not hesitate. "You." The simplicity of it shattered her last defense. Before she could answer, a cry split the quiet from inside the house, the girl's voice sharp with distress. They were on their feet instantly. In the bedroom, the girl thrashed beneath blankets, tears streaking her cheeks. "She's gone," she sobbed. "She's gone again." Alice moved first, gathering the child into her arms without waiting for permission. The girl clung fiercely, burying her face against Alice's shoulder. "I'm here," Alice murmured, rocking gently. "I'm not leaving." Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, helpless and stricken. The girl's sobs softened gradually into breaths. "Promise," she whispered. Alice felt the weight of the word, like an oath demanded before witnesses. "I promise," she said. The promise was not about shelter, it was about choice. When the girl finally slept, still curled against her, Alice looked up at Daniel over the child's head. Something had shifted irrevocably. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't owe us that." "Yes," she said softly, "I do." They laid the girl down gently and returned to the porch, though neither sat. "You don't have to stay because of gratitude," Daniel said, "or obligation." "I'm not," she replied. "Then why?" She crossed the small distance between them, courage rising like a tide she could no longer resist. "Because somewhere between your stubborn son and your guarded daughter and your impossible steadiness, I stopped surviving and started living." His breath caught. "I don't want to be here because I need a home," she continued. "I want to be here because this is my home." The words hung in the cool night air. Daniel cupped her face carefully, giving her every chance to retreat. She didn't. Their kiss was not desperate or hurried. It was slow, deliberate, sealing a truth both had circled for weeks. It carried grief and hope in equal measure, past and future colliding gently instead of violently. When they parted, the world felt rearranged. Inside, a small figure watched from the hallway shadows. The girl stepped forward, hesitant but resolute. In her hands, she held the pale blue dress. Alice's heart stilled. The child approached, eyes bright with unshed tears. Mama wore this when she said goodbye to winter, she explained softly. She said it was for new things. Alice knelt, breath trembling. I want you to have it, the girl said. Daniel turned away briefly, overcome. Alice accepted the dress as though receiving a sacred trust. I will take care of it, she promised. The girl studied her for a long moment, then did something even braver than offering fabric. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Alice's neck. Good, she whispered. The embrace was small but seismic. Daniel closed the distance and drew them both into his arms. The boy, woken by movement, stumbled out, rubbing his eyes, and joined the tangle without question. For a moment they stood bound together in the lamplight, not arranged by necessity, but joined by choice. Outside, wind stirred the apple trees, shaking loose a final scattering of leaves. Autumn was yielding to something colder, yet the house glowed warm against the dark. Later, when the children slept again, Daniel found Alice standing at the window, blue dress folded carefully over her arm. You're trembling, he observed. I've made promises before, she said. They were broken by fate. I'm not fate, he replied. No, she agreed, turning to face him. You're a man asking me to stay not because you need a mother for your children, but because you love me. He did not flinch from the word this time. Yes. The confession filled the room with a power more thrilling than gunfire, more terrifying than any storm. She crossed to him without hesitation. I love you, she answered. The words did not feel like surrender. They felt like victory. Outside, somewhere beyond the fences and fields, the world remained uncertain, harsh, and unpredictable. But inside the ranch house, beneath its worn beams and steady roof, a different certainty had taken root. Daniel drew her close, not as a bargain struck in desperation, but as a woman he had chosen and who had chosen him in return. And as dawn began to lighten the horizon once more, washing the prairie in pale gold, Alice understood that she had not been taken in. She had come home.